G'day guys, Steve with Broken Sprocket. In this video we're going to be cleaning out all the EGR system on my 2009 Toyota Hilux. That includes throttle body, intake manifold and everything else that's got to do with the EGR system. This is a dirty, filthy, disgusting job and I'm not looking forward to it at all. So let's get started. Okay, trying to remove these fuel lines here. It's very hard to get to them. They're way down the bottom here. So I've just removed the fuel filter from this canister because it sits here, give me a bit more room. I've also removed the battery, which sits here, gives me some more room. I'll probably have to remove this dipstick and a couple other things there just to get into those sections because that's quite difficult. Okay, I've got the fuel lines out now. And where they go into the injectors, I've just put some tape there to cover them up so no rubbish goes into my injectors. Now I'm going to start to pull the throttle bodies and stuff off there and strip it down piece by piece until the manifold's eventually off. You can sort of see it's starting to get blocked up from that point on. It'll only get worse from here. Okay, I've got the manifold off it now. There's actually quite a fair bit of work in getting that manifold off and little air lines and different things you have to pull off. So I've pulled it off and it's actually not as bad as I was expecting. Okay, you can see the ports. This one here seems to be the worst. It's blocked the worst, but even still, it's not as bad as I was expecting. So it needs a really good clean out. Yeah, I thought it was going to be much worse than this. And you can see the head has some sludge and garbage. But again, I was expecting it to be much worse than this. So I'm going to give this a real good clean out. Put it all back together. I'm just going to clean it out with this EGR intake cleaner. But first I'm just going to get a screwdriver and scrape the bulk of it out, then spray it with this and give it a good clean. Alright, I got inside this head section. It's looking pretty good, pretty clean. It wasn't as bad as I thought. Sort of scraped this much out with the screwdriver, but it was nowhere near as bad as I thought it was going to be, but still most definitely needed to be cleaned out. Well, I've got this manifold looking pretty good now. Before, all of these were black and covered in absolute junk. So everything's working nicely there. The intake is looking good there. This one here, pretty good. So just going to let that dry out overnight. And I've had enough for today. I'm going to come back again tomorrow and finish it off. Okay, it's the following day now. As you can see, there's a lot of parts that have been removed from the vehicle to do this EGR clean. And now it's time to put it all back together. obviously the same way you pulled it apart in the opposite direction. Now all these gaskets, they're all steel. You can often reuse these gaskets, but I've got some new ones, so I'll throw those in there. But often you can just reuse these gaskets as long as they're not bent or crimped. So let's get started. Now a helpful tip for you all is when you pull it apart, there's lots of these lines and hoses and stuff. They go all over the place. I find an easy way to deal with that is to take photos as you unassemble it, and you can see two of these lines here look very similar and go into a similar spot, but if you follow the line you can see which one actually goes where, so you can't confuse them. So as you pull a vehicle apart, just take some snapshots as you're pulling it apart and you'll know which line goes to which piece again. Okay, place the bolts back onto this manifold and snug it down. Alright, next to go on now that the manifold's on is this fuel rail. It did have one of these fuel rail gaskets, but it's fell into behind the engine bay somewhere, so I'll have to find it later, but I'm going to replace it with a new one anyway. You'll also see on this rail here there's connectors on both ends, so luckily I've taken photographs and I know exactly which hoses they will line up with. Okay, I'm pretty close to finish now. I'm just about to put the cover on it. The good thing is there are no spare parts sitting on the table that when I pulled it apart. I've just gone through and checked all of these plugs are all in, all of these vacuum lines are all hooked up. There was one just behind the intercooler that I forgot to put in, so I found that on my last checkup. So everything seems to be in place. I've got to put the battery back in. I need to put some more coolant in the radiator because it loses some when you disconnect this piece, and put the cover on, and we'll see if this vehicle starts. Hopefully it does, because there's been quite a lot of stuff pulled off here and you can quite easily misplace something or forget to put something on there.
Trying to pump fuel back into the fuel rails. Took a few goes, but we eventually got it.
Well, everything seems to be running good. It took a little while to get the fuel back up into it, but once it was there, fired up perfect. There's no strange lights on in the dash or anything, so happy days. If you like this kind of thing, consider subscribing, and you can also follow Broken Sprocket on Instagram. Thanks for watching.